The Syncretism in late Antiquity and Middle Ages. Late Antiquity and the medieval imagination were allergic to purity. Hellenistic, Jewish, Christian, Egyptian, Persian, and nascent Islamic ideas collided and fused in busy marketplaces of text and rites. Gnostic cosmologies retooled mythic letters, hermetic manuals repurposed chthonic lore into Celtic accents, and visionary medieval authors stitched classical motifs onto Christian eschatology. The result is a rich bricolage in which gates, books, judges, and boats recur in new idioms. Sometimes orthodox, sometimes heretical, but always practiced as maps people could use to navigate fear, hope, and the public life of memory. Gates and thresholds, portals, spheres, and the stair the soul climbs. Thresholds multiply into staircases and stages, gates, spheres, and ladders, borrowed from Platonic ascent. Egyptian maps and Jewish apocalyptic itineraries turn the afterlife into a created architecture of progress or peril. The soul's routes becomes architectural. What used to be a single door now looks like a building site. Gates to pass, spheres to circle, stairways to climb, and mansions to clear. These are not idle metaphors, but a coherent grammar. Each step names a toast, each gate a kind of credential, and each sphere a moral geography that tells you what sort of traveler you were in life. The point is practical. Spiritual life is imagined as a discipline of passage, and the map teaches the pilgrim how to walk. Classical and ancient imaginations get press-ganged into service. Platonic essence applies the language of concentric spheres and greater vision. Higher clarity lies beyond harder climbs. Egyptian underworld maps contribute a procedural logistics, names, passwords, and folders of rites that keep the soul's paperwork in order. Jewish apocalyptic letters and heaven vision literature hand down the idea of stair rooms where angels, watchers, and guards check your credentials. The result is a hybrid architecture that looks sensible if you imagine the cosmos as a bureaucratic capital. Now, rituals become keys for doors. Baptism, chrism, initiation marks, and liturgical rites are described as entry credentials, sacraments that open a gate or grant the right passwords. To be questioned is to be given a passkey. To know the right liturgy is to possess a map. This is less superstition and more social technology. Communities encode membership in ritual tokens that, in cosmology, appear as legitimate credentials at each threshold. Itineraries read like travel guidebooks. Vision literature, apocalypses, ascent texts, and the accounts of holy travelers list named stations, hostile sentinels, and acceptable replies. These narratives are practical manuals. They instruct on which prayers to speak, which confessions to make, and what to avoid. The pilgrim reader learns where to pause, whom to petition, and where to ascend intercession. The joyous blunt utility explains its popularity, and facing a stair that ascends through 7 heavens, it helps to know the stop names in advance. And access is deliberately ambivalent. Some programs privilege secret knowledge, gnosis, and esoteric passwords that open inner gates. Others insist on sacraments and communal rites. Still others insist that moral purity and charity are the real credentials. Theology is therefore quarrel. Is the ladder climbed by insight, by sacrament, or by habit? The argument matters because it determines who trains, who prays, and who can claim a key without scandalizing the neighborhoods. You see, guardians and gatekeepers multiply. Angels, demon-like sentries, psychopompic figures, and canonical patrons stand at each portal. They are not theatrical obstructions, but civic functionaries with rules to enforce. Name, humbly account, and show your community's endorsements. The cosmological bureaucracy loves paperwork. The rite, the prayer, the request. These are your receipts. Miss one and the encounter becomes awkward. Have them in order, and the passage proceeds with the courteous efficiency of a monastery refectory. The pedagogical function is plain and stern. Layer thresholds teach discipline. Prayer is repetition that conditions the soul. Fasting is a stair-builder's labor. Liturgy is rehearsed password practice. These practices do more work in the present. They habituate the person to the attentions and virtues required by the next stage. The afterlife map and thus reorganizes present behavior into a regimen. So prepare now for the steps you will later be asked to climb. Syncretism is not merely bricolage, it is methods. Borrowed motives are refitted to local moral economic. Platonic clarity is married to sacramental entry. Egyptian names become liturgical cues. Apocalyptic letters are reinterpreted as communal pedagogy. The hybrid cosmology insists on both procedure and promise. A graded architecture promises progression while demanding the small, steady labors that make ascent possible. This is not escapism so much as civic insurance. If the afterlife has doors and stages, then living is training for the climb. Rituals are not ornament but practical kit, and the community's work, prayers, alms, teaching, functions like a maintenance crew, keeping the stairwell lit. Learn the route, tend the tokens, practice the steps. The stair is long, but someone who walks it with preparation finds the ascent less inexplicable and more familiarly managed. Transit and Psychopomps, angels, demons, and the mediated ascents. Transit becomes theater, angelic escorts, daemonic examiners, and intermediary guides test knowledge, faith, and ritual fitness. The soul climbs stage thresholds. Angels appear as ushers and clerks of the sky. Ordered calls that escort a soul through ringing corridors, opening doors with a nod, and the quiet authority of those who have memorized the routes. Their task is practical: announce, witness, present, and the manner is briskly pastoral. Comforting enough, businesslike enough to stop anyone from loitering in sentimental ways. They sing the road clear, and, when needed, hand over a scroll as one hands over a boarding pass. Opposite them, daemonic examiners stand at better thresholds like officious porters who enjoy inconvenience. They ask questions that are not merely theological puzzles, but checks on a life's workmanship. Did you act in accord with your name? Can you answer the passwords? These figures perform the negative choreography of the ascent. Obstruction that teaches by friction, and their objections force the traveler to show receipt for mercy in the form of remembered rites or evidence of charity. Gnostic and Hermetic guides played a specialist role. Salvific knowledge, passwords, sigils, and ritual sayings that open locked doors. They are less theatrical and more technical. The keeper of a mnemonic, the one who knows which names to speak and in what order. Their presence introduces ambivalence. Knowledge opens, but knowledge can be sold cheaply as magic or hoarded as sprites. In these narratives, the right syllable, properly intoned, is as decisive as a kindly counsel. Visionary intercession supplies a softer register. Saints, martyrs, and holy sages step forward as guarantors. Voices that vouch for a soul whose private ledger is messy, but whose public fidelity can be attested. Amateurs whisper a saint's remembered hospitality, or a teacher's endorsement acts like a recommendation letter in a cosmic hiring process. It does not erase error, but can tear the committee toward mercy. Intercessors make ascent communal rather than solitary. The pedagogical exam is formal and exacting. Trials of knowledge and purity take shapes the imagination can hold. A corridor where each door asks a single pointed question. A stair whose steps are virtues tested by simple tasks. A hall with symbolic rite, offering, naming, confession, must be performed to proceed. These are not arbitrary ordeals, but rehearsals of the life one should have lived. Prayer practiced under pressure, charity recalled under scrutiny, humility demonstrated in a single telling silence. Tone is sober, with a dry smile. The ascent's theatre revolves the prepared and bemuses the unready. Angels are efficient ushers, daemons are tearsome auditors, guides are tradecraft experts, and intercessors are the community's advocates. The drama teaches a compact lesson without ceremonizing. The soul's passage is social, technical, and performative, and the ascent prefers travelers who travel not as tourists, but as practiced participants. Called Inhabitants, thrones, books, and a mixed company of the beyond. The beyond is a mixed court, divine judges, angelic clerks, and patriarchal elders sit beside older demiurges and gnomic officials. Records are read, verdicts argued, and local cultic memories are refitted into new theological offices. So, imagine the afterlife as a courtroom that acquired an access. At the central bench sits the sovereign figure, Christ in much questioning imagination that is, whose presence shapes the tone, final, merciful, and surprisingly attentive to paperwork. Angels file the books, trumpet the summons, and act like long-suffering clerks who have seen every human improvisation. Around them sit elders and patriarchs, witnesses from remembered households. They are the community's memory, the ones who remember names and keep precedents straight. But the bench is not monolithic. You see, texts of late antiquity and medieval vision literature show a plural cast. Alongside orthodox judges, you will find traces of old offices, Gnostic demiurges, who once claimed authorship of the cosmos, Hermetic rulers with their astrological brief, and local cultic figures refashioned as marginal officials. They do not always vanish, rather they are folded into a hybrid bureaucracy where authority is negotiated, not merely asserted. The result is a courtroom where ancient mythic claims meet scriptural testimony, and both have to be accounted for. So, The books matter. Deeds are not whispered, but read aloud. Registers of charity, records of oath, and the small letter entries of everyday fidelity accumulate into evidence. Angelic scribes, those dutiful recorders, present these accounts like auditors bringing forward the ledgers. The act of reading is itself civic theology, memory giving voice, acts made legible, reputations translated into a format the court can educate. And martyrs as well as visionary witnesses sit in the front rows. Their testimony functions like character reference and legal precedent. A martyr's steadfastness speaks louder than rhetorical finesse. A visionary's account can supply crucial context, showing how a life fits into a broader pattern of witness. These witnesses are not mere ornaments, they are active participants, petitioners for mercy, and sometimes the deciding voices in disputes where motive and marginality matter. Adjudication is layered and argumentative. Verdicts are not simply announced, they are deliberated. Claims are made, context weighed, intercessions considered. Demands for reparation, acts of penance, and petitions from the living enter the docket. Saints' intercession and communal feast appear as admissible mitigation. The courtroom thus performs social repair as much as it renders final judgments. It hopes to rebalance, to restore names, and to make institutions credible across generations. Administrations multiply, clerical, angelic, and even demonic offices perform distinct functions. Ushering, recording, accusing, and sometimes obstructing. The hybrid bureaucracy is neither cynical nor comic, it is pragmatic. Old gods become minor functionaries. Local cults are reinterpreted as patronage networks, and theological systems adopt whatever practical machinery will keep memory and order intact. This makes court, thus cultural work. By rehearsing verdicts and reading records aloud, it codifies what communities value: hospitality, oath-keeping, fidelity to kin, and the courage to repair wrongs. The afterlife social order thus becomes a pedagogy. Those virtues that appear in the books are the ones future generations are taught to practice. The beyond, like any well-run municipality, is fond of good files and better witnesses. So, keep your entries honest, your witnesses ready, and your neighbors well treated. Because when the books are opened, the court will want to know what sort of administration you run in life. Judgment, reward, and cultural function. Knowledge, penitence, and the sociology of salvation. Judgment mixes revelation and ritual. Salvation reads either a secret ascent through knowledge or as the fruit of public penitential rites, and the system exists to teach memory, repair communities, and keep institutions honest. There are two languages for getting across the great divide. One is whispered in libraries and under olive groves. Gnosis, the notion that a secret knowing, a flash of insight, lifts the soul past guards and gates. The other is shouted in cloisters and parish lists. Sacrament and penitence, a public economy of rites, prayers, and alms that gradually square accounts and mend what was broken. In syncretic worlds, these currencies sit awkwardly in the same wallet. Both have value, and both buy passage in different markets. Gnosis promises liberation by clarity. Vision, literature, and esoteric strands insist that knowledge, names, passwords, the proper ordering of cosmological facts, unlocks thresholds, The ascent is technical. Learn the syllable, see the sign, remember the letter. Triumph is personal and immediate. It feels like opening a door from inside. The tone is intimate and a little conspiratorial. Salvation is craft practiced by patients who have learned the routes. Sacrament offers a public route: baptism, confession, liturgy, the Mass. Communal penitential practice. These are procedural acts that reconfigure social standing. Penitence revives a lies file in public. Confession tidies accounts. Charity pays debts to the living. Liturgy revives memory, so that the names read kindly when the books are opened. The emphasis is ecclesial rather than solitary. Salvation is a civic project because the living can help the dead and because the community's rights stabilize memory. So, between them sit intermediary schemes, purgatorial gradations, temporary stations, and visionary corrections patch the gap. Here the two currencies meet. Secret insight may speed a soul on its way, but so will the public labor of prayer, almsgiving, and reparation. The intermediate state functions like a queue with a customer service desk. Some customers are expedited, others are sent to restoration rooms where patients and penance do the work, doctrine, and practice agree as necessary. Institutions codify the practice. Monasteries keep the liturgical books. Confraternities collect bequests for masses. Penitential manuals supply the do's and don'ts of repair. Private visions are domesticated. What was once a solitary ascent becomes a repertory play. Saints' lives narrated, miracle cases catalogued, canonical rites standardized. This is a mere bureaucracy for its own sake. It transforms personal experience into public scaffolding that communities can rely on in crisis and in peace. So, the social function is unmistakably practical. Syncretic judgments do 4 civic jobs at once. They console the bereaved, teach ethical norms, redistribute resources through ritual, masses, alms, funeral feasts, and legitimize authority. Bishops, abbots contain office, who can coordinate repair. Doctrine becomes social technology. It prescribes how people keep memory current, how it funds perpetual prayers, and how it converts private sorrow into collective responsibility. Remarkably, the rivalry between Gnosis and Sacrament is less a war than a dialogue. Where Gnosis offers speed, Sacrament offers accountability. Where insight promises escape, ritual promises repair. Communities hedge bets. They keep chapels stocked with candles and the library with manuals. They cultivate both the contemplative who seeks insight and the chantry that sides at the altar. The result is a resilient moral ecology that can both comfort the visionary and feed the poor. So, secrecy is all very romantic, but parish books are stubborn things. In a cosmic audit, a private flash of insight is lovely company, but a well-documented record, regular charity, and a community that remembers your name are the kind of practical investments that theologians and religious both admire. Salvation in these mixed systems is therefore both a personal ascent and a social achievement. Knowledge opens doors, penitence steadies the path, and institutions keep the stairwell lit for everyone who comes at last to climb. And lastly, in late antique and medieval syncretism, the afterlife is a crowded map. Stairwells borrowed from Plato, passwords from Hermetica, martyrs in the dock, and angels checking the ledges. The point is practical. People need routes they can walk, texts to guide them, rites to enact, and a vocabulary of hope that will make grief legible and repairable.